My name is Elena Foster, and I just graduated from college last week. I didn't expect anything big. No flowers, no party, not even a small banner on the fence, just a family dinner. A simple congratulations from the people I call home. But instead, I came home to a frozen pizza still in its packaging on the stove, and a short message in the family group chat. Congrats, Elena. No one was home, no one called. The cruelest part? Just last week, my entire family threw a party with fireworks and a drone photographer for Emma, my younger sister, just because she completed a 3-month video editing course. When I asked why Emma got a party and I didn't, my mom just shrugged. You're not really the celebrating type, right? I didn't reply. I didn't eat. I just grabbed my bag and walked out. What about you? If this were your family, what would you do? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments so I know I'm not alone. My family lives in the suburbs of Rockford, Illinois, a quiet neighborhood with white fences, evenly cut lawns, and houses so alike you sometimes forget whose front door you're standing at. My mom, Elena Foster, works as an administrative assistant at an insurance company. Every morning, she drives an old sedan to the office, carrying a lunchbox, a stack of documents, and a simmering frustration no one ever asks about. My dad, Dennis, is a longtime electrician. He works with his hands but believes the man of the house must be the voice of reason. His favorite saying is, just get it done, don't overcomplicate things. And to him, emotions are nothing but unnecessary complications. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. Everything in our home operated on a principle of just enough, enough to get by, enough to understand, enough to stay quiet. But within that enough, there were always things missing, important things. I'm the oldest child. Ever since I was little, I was the kind of daughter adults like to call easy. I didn't break toys, didn't whine for extra ice cream, didn't drag my parents to the principal's office for fighting. I learned to read early, tie my own hair, and fill out scholarship forms before anyone showed me how. I scored perfect grades and no one celebrated. I was chosen as group leader and no one asked how I felt. But I never questioned it. Because from a young age, I was taught that not causing trouble meant being loved, so I worked hard to become the kind of child who never needed anyone. My younger sister Emma is the perfect opposite of me. She's a burst of color, a spotlight magnet, the kind of kid who could turn a normal dinner into a talk show just by retelling her school day. Emma knows how to stir emotion, how to draw attention, how to be remembered, and because of that, she was always seen. Emma's 10th birthday had a 3-tier cake, a full guest list from her class, and a handmade name banner on the front gate. My 12th birthday? I don't really remember. Maybe because there wasn't anything worth remembering. Every family event revolved around Emma, whether it was her birthday, the end of the school year, or even just hitting 10,000 followers on TikTok. They'd throw BBQ parties, invite the neighbors, string up fairy lights in the yard like it was a wedding. Me? I got an email from school congratulating me for making the dean's list, then walked into the living room to see my mom adjusting Emma's dress before she left to film a vlog. My dad once said, she's got spirit. She's the one who needs encouragement. He meant Emma. As for me, I was the one no one needed to mention. I wasn't jealous. At least, I don't think so. I was just tired. Tired of trying to be good enough, but never good enough to be the reason for a family dinner. On holidays, I was usually the first in the kitchen, the fastest to clean, and the last one left behind with a sink full of dishes. But when I got a full scholarship in 12th grade, my mom just said, good. That's one less thing to worry about. I knew she didn't mean it as an insult, but it wasn't a congratulations either. It sounded more like a budget report than recognition. And in this family, I slowly learned one thing. The person who gets celebrated isn't the one who works the hardest, it's the one who makes the most noise. So I learned to do everything in silence. I started working part-time from my freshman year of college, sending money home to help cover bills. I was the one who renewed Netflix after it was canceled for non-payment. I was the one who fixed the printer when Emma screamed in the middle of the house, "No one cares about me." And our parents came rushing out like it was a national emergency. And me? I learned to sit still when I was overlooked. And when my sister started making social media videos, I was the one who adjusted the audio, wrote the subtitles, uploaded the files to the cloud. No one knew. And no one asked. Because in their eyes, I could handle things myself. And the cruelest thing about being able to handle everything yourself is that it convinces others you don't need to be loved. Emma once cried because no one threw her a party after she finished a 12-week community college course. The result? A backyard celebration built in 3 days. There was cake, large printed photos, mini fireworks, and a photographer flying a drone around. I stood behind the curtain, watching the blinking lights reflect off my glasses, and told myself, maybe I'm just not the one who gets celebrated. My college graduation took place on a cool morning in early May. The sky was as clear as freshly wiped glass, the sun bright but not stifling under the traditional black robe. I walked among hundreds of other students, each carrying their own story, their own journey. Some had just overcome illness, tears still fresh on their cheeks. Others held hands with their parents, arms around each other, posing for endless photos. Me? I stood alone, one hand gripping a cardboard name card printed with Elena Foster, honors graduate, environmental engineering. My other hand held my phone, constantly checking the family group chat, hoping something might change. But the phone stayed silent like a stone. No one messaged to say they were on the way. No one asked where to park. No one said, "Did you put on your gown yet?" I had sent out formal invitations 2 weeks prior. Emailed my mom, texted my dad. Even called to remind Emma, knowing she was busy prepping her new video series, Life-Changing Week. I thought at least one of them would reply. Even a simple message. Just a, "Mom will try to make it." But no. 2 whole weeks passed, and the family chat remained filled with lazy cat memes and coffee shop pictures from Emma's usual hangout. Every time a notification popped up, I allowed myself to hope, and then hated myself for hoping. I came home a week before graduation, thinking that maybe, face to face, they'd bring it up. Ask, "What are you wearing to the ceremony?" Or, "What time should we leave?" But no. They didn't ask, and they didn't say a word. My mom was busy ordering cake for Emma's early birthday live stream. My dad came home late every night, ate quickly, and went upstairs. I didn't speak either. Part of it was pride, the other part was fear that if I brought it up, I'd get that familiar shrug, that look that says, "Why do you always make things such a big deal?" So I stayed silent. Just like them. Except, to me, silence never meant forgetting. I still went to the ceremony like anyone else. Saturday in the front row, among the honored students. When the dean read my name, he paused for a beat, smiled, and said, "This is a student whose research was published in a national journal, and who led the development of a pilot water filtration system in Mason County." The entire auditorium applauded. I walked onto the stage, shook the dean's hand firmly, my eyes glancing over the crowd where I had reserved 3 seats early that morning. 3 empty chairs. I smiled not out of pride, but because if I didn't smile, I was afraid I might break down. After the ceremony, my friends gathered to take photos. Some had their parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles with them. Some had boyfriends holding flowers, girlfriends carrying balloons. I stood there for a moment, then quietly turned away. I went home. The white 2-story wooden house at the end of a quiet street, the place I grew up, the place I once believed was home. When I stepped inside, there was no music, no voices. No smell of baked goods or the beef stew my mother usually made when she wanted to welcome someone home. Only the cold scent of an unused microwave. On the kitchen counter sat a frozen pizza from a cheap brand, still wrapped in plastic. No note. No instructions. No one had even bothered to preheat the oven before I got home. And then, just as I set my bag down, my phone buzzed. A new notification in the family group chat. I opened it. A message from my mother. "Congrats, Elena." No emoji. No follow-up. Right above it was a photo Uncle Jim posted of his new dog. Right below it, Emma complaining that her camera had gone out of focus. I stared at the pizza. The same food that used to be my default dinner whenever my parents forgot I had night classes. A flavor so familiar I once thought it was my favorite until I grew up and realized it was just the only thing that was ever there. That pizza, on my graduation day, felt like a final reminder that I had never been the reason anyone in this house made an effort. Last week, I had stood on the second-floor balcony looking down at Emma's backyard party. Mini fireworks lit up the sky. My mom wore a new yellow dress, beaming as she stood beside Emma giving a speech in front of the camera. My dad stood by the grill, baseball cap on, flipping hamburgers like he was catering for the entire town. A drone circled overhead, capturing footage of Emma overcoming her course challenge, an online program she started and quit 3 times because she lost inspiration. Everyone was there. Family, neighbors, friends. I wasn't invited. I just watched from the balcony with a strange feeling, not sadness, but emptiness. And today, when I walked through the door and saw that pizza, I realized I had bet wrong again. I had thought, this time will be different. A college graduation is something significant. It's a milestone recognized by society. It's something even the most indifferent people would feel obligated to acknowledge. But no. Not for my family. Not for people who only know how to celebrate when the noise is loud enough, the lights bright enough, and my name isn't on the main banner. I sat in the kitchen for a while longer, not touching the pizza, still sitting alone on the counter. The evening sunlight filtered through the window blinds, casting long shadows on the wooden floor where I used to play with building blocks at age 6, cried after my first failing math grade, and hoped someone would see me, truly see me, not just glance by out of habit. Everything was so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking, steady and cold, as if counting down to something I couldn't yet name. Nearly an hour later, the front door opened. My mother walked in, carrying 2 grocery bags from the store, phone pressed between her shoulder and ear. Her voice was light and cheerful, laughing as she chatted about some coleslaw recipe. I didn't say anything at first, just observed from where I sat in the kitchen. She set the bags on the table, started untying her shoes, never once glancing in my direction as if I were just another old item in a house too familiar to notice. When she finally hung up, I stood and slowly asked, "Mom, why didn't anyone do anything for me today?" The question didn't come out loud, or angry, or demanding. It was just a small crack in the calm surface I'd maintained, a crack even I wasn't sure I wanted an answer to. My mother looked at me, not quite surprised, but with the kind of expression people have when they suddenly remember they've forgotten something important. She shrugged, opened her grocery bags, pulled out a few bunches of greens, a bag of rice, and a cheap tub of ice cream for Emma. "You never liked parties anyway, right?" she said without looking up. "I thought you hated noise. You used to say you didn't want anyone making a fuss. I figured giving you space was the best thing." Oh, I don't know what numbed me more. The words themselves, or the way she said them so casually, so lightly, as if she were commenting on me not liking onions, not on the fact that I had just graduated college and no one showed up. I stood there, frozen, like some forgotten object. The words spun in my head. "I thought you didn't like being celebrated." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was busy." Not, "I forgot." Just, "I thought." A perfect simplification that erased any responsibility, like my being neglected was something I had chosen. I didn't respond. I didn't cry. I simply turned and walked upstairs, slowly, silently, as if I were afraid I might drop my emotions if I moved too fast. In my room, I opened the closet and pulled out the black suitcase that had been sitting there since I came home. I hadn't touched it yet because I'd planned to unpack after the ceremony, after a family dinner, maybe with my mom's beef stew, some juice, and a little conversation. I thought I'd put a few things back on the old dresser, hang up my clothes, settle in like this was still home, but now it wasn't. I carefully folded my laptop and placed it in the padded sleeve inside the suitcase. Then I grabbed my diploma, the official copy, my name in bold, a red seal in the bottom corner, One of the few things in my life I truly felt proud of, and slid it between my research notes and the savings book I'd built from 4 years of part-time jobs. That account didn't hold much, but it was enough. Enough for me to leave. Enough to never come back unless I wanted to. I didn't look around the room one last time. There was nothing worth remembering. The faded wallpaper, the chipped study desk, the middle school photo of me tucked behind a row of Emma's framed pictures from a school field trip. I packed without thinking much. Clothes, phone charger, the book I was halfway through. The only thing I didn't take was expectation. I rolled my suitcase down the stairs, passing my mother, who was now intently reading the label on a yogurt container like it was more important than the world itself. I said nothing. No goodbye. No note left behind. I just walked past the pizza still sitting there, untouched and cold like a perfect symbol of indifference, shrink-wrapped in plastic. At the door, I unlocked my car, tucked the suitcase in the trunk. I paused for a moment, glancing back at the house once my entire world, now just an empty shell. No one ran after me. No one called, "Where are you going?" No hand reached out to stop me, and I didn't expect it to. I just thought, they couldn't even put the pizza in the oven. Why did I ever think I deserved more than that? So I got in the car, closed the door, started the engine, and drove off. No tears, no screaming. Just a quiet exit. But sometimes, that silence is the loudest scream of all. Night had begun to fall as I drove away from the street I knew too well. The streetlights flickered on one by one, their dull yellow glow stretching the shadow of my car like a silent ghost fleeing. I didn't cry. I didn't feel pain, just a kind of emptiness like something inside me had slipped out long ago, and I was only just noticing. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour before pulling into a small roadside inn nestled just off the old highway outside Rockford. A weathered wooden sign swayed in the wind. Eagle Nest Inn. Vacancy. No one greeted me, no one saw me off. And maybe, in that moment, that was exactly the kind of place I needed most. The front desk was quiet. The older woman behind the counter barely looked up as she asked for my name and handed me the key to room 2B without requiring a polite smile or any effort to seem strong. I stepped into the small room. The old wooden floor creaked softly beneath my feet. A double bed, loosely covered in a wrinkled white sheet, sat against the far wall. A dim yellow lamp glowed from the bedside table, casting the kind of soft light you only see in late sunsets. It wasn't luxurious, it wasn't pretty, but it was clean and quiet. And most importantly, no footsteps. No television blaring. No passive-aggressive remarks thrown into the air like darts. For the first time in years, I didn't have to brace myself to keep the family peace. I opened my suitcase and pulled out my laptop, thinking I'd check some emails but closed it again almost immediately. I didn't want to do anything. I took off my coat, lay on the bed, and let my body relax for the first time all day. No more tensing up to endure, no more holding back tears, I just breathed. Slowly, gently, as if learning to exist alone. Without performing, without being the child who could handle everything. It was 11:42 p.m. when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Grandpa Henry. I hesitated before opening it. Not out of fear, just unsure of what I was ready to hear. The message was just one sentence. Why's everyone freaking out? No question mark, no emojis. Just a quiet, confused murmur from an old man sitting in another state, late at night, flooded with phone calls from his kids and grandkids, not understanding what was going on. I stared at those words for a long time. I pictured him, his old suit he always wore on holidays, leaning on his cane, his sharp eyes behind round glasses. The only one in the entire family who had ever asked me if I was really okay or just pretending to be. But even with him, I didn't want to explain. What was there to explain? That I graduated college with honors only to come home and find a frozen pizza? That I spent 4 years standing like a shadow in my own family, and now even that shadow wasn't reflected anymore? I thought about typing something, maybe a reassurance, a joke, or just a single period. But instead, I turned off the phone. Not out of anger. Out of exhaustion. I no longer had the energy to explain why I hurt. I no longer needed anyone to understand. I had spent my entire life in a family where I had to write a press release just to justify my own existence. Tonight, I just wanted silence. To be no one. To carry nothing. Just Elena, not Emma's sister, not the daughter who doesn't like parties, not the one who's so easy to raise. I pulled the blanket up, stared at the cracked wooden ceiling, and for the first time in years, I fell asleep without rehearsing what I'd have to say tomorrow to make everyone feel more comfortable. I didn't have to carry another day. Because today, I chose to let go. And letting go wasn't weakness, it was the clearest sign that I knew I deserved more than a cold pizza and a one-line message. I woke up just after 6 a.m. Not to an alarm. Not to the sound of yelling downstairs or my mom banging on the door telling me to come eat before it gets cold. I woke up because the morning sun slipped through the thin curtain and landed gently on my cheek, a kind of soft light I usually only saw from the library windows. My head felt heavy not from lack of sleep, but from the hollow weight of a decision so final that no one had yet realized it couldn't be undone. I stayed in bed a little longer, eyes fixed on the hotel ceiling, free from the pressure of strained conversations, of dinner tables where I silently wondered if I'd messed something up again. Everything was still. And in that stillness, I didn't hear footsteps approaching to lecture, correct, or judge me. I turned on the bathroom light without fearing a voice shouting from another room. "Why are all the lights on? That's a waste of electricity." Or, "Did you break the switch again?" I washed my face, brushed my hair, ran the water without hearing anyone mumble. It's too early to be using hot water. The morning air in this place, the small room, the soft bed, the creaky wood floor under every step didn't carry the scent of judgment. No bleach-heavy floor cleaner my mom used whenever she cleans the house to get rid of your negative energy. No smell of cold leftovers because I came down late, and definitely no cold pizza from the day before. Just the scent of instant coffee I had just made, light, plain, but strangely comforting. I sat down at the small desk in the room, pulled out my laptop, and turned it on. Not to work. Not to check emails. But to write. Not because I needed to tell anyone, but because I needed to see myself clearly. I opened a blank file and titled it, "Things I Paid For That No One Knows About." Then my fingers started to type, starting with the easiest to remember. The electricity bill from January last year, when my mom forgot to pay it because she was busy planning Emma's birthday party, and I quietly transferred money through the app so we wouldn't lose power in the middle of winter. Then the internet plan, I had signed up for it during my freshman year of college because my parents didn't understand how that stuff works, and they hadn't asked about the bill since. I kept going. Netflix Family HD plan with 5 profiles, of which I only used one. Spotify Premium, my mom used it for meditation music, Emma used it to edit her videos, and I used it just to fill the silence while studying. Then came Emma's laptop, the silver MacBook she dropped while filming a vlog in the yard. Dad scolded her lightly, and Mom comforted her by saying, "I'm sure Elena knows where to get it fixed, ask her." I quietly took it in, paid nearly $180 from what I had saved tutoring online. No one asked. No one remembered. They only said, "Good thing it got fixed. If it broke again, poor Emma." I listed a few more items. The garage door repair, a new router, Dad's credit card debt from 2 years ago when he forgot he had maxed it out. All of it handled through my account, the one belonging to the person they believed doesn't like to make a fuss. I sat there, typing line after line, not to blame, but to record. To acknowledge the efforts of someone invisible. The child who doesn't need celebrating. There's something strange that happens when you write down the truth. It doesn't ease the pain right away, but it makes it clear you're not crazy like people tried to make you believe. I was told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, always playing the victim. But this list, these numbers, these transaction records, they're living proof that I wasn't imagining anything. That I had existed, contributed, carried weight not with words, but with action. And my silence wasn't weakness. It was endurance that had never been recognized. I sat there for nearly an hour, feeling my mind lighten with each line. When I finally hit save, the clock read 8:12 a.m. I stood, glanced around the room. Everything was still quiet, but something inside me had shifted. As if, for the first time, I had acknowledged my own worth without waiting for someone else to say it out loud. I shut the laptop, stepped out of the room, and took a deep breath of the May morning air where no one called my name, no one forced me to smile. No one told me I was too quiet. And for the first time in years, I felt I no longer had to brace myself just to exist. I wasn't the strong daughter. I was just someone who hadn't been listened to in a long time and had finally decided to listen to herself. I returned to the motel after a late breakfast at the small cafe down the road. They called it brunch, but I didn't really eat much. Just ordered an apple muffin and a black coffee, then sat by the window, watching the cars go by. Everyone seemed to be in a hurry heading to work, to school, or somewhere else. As for me, for the first time in years, I had nowhere to be, no one waiting on me, no one telling me what to do. I should have felt empty. But I didn't. I felt light. Light enough that by the time I unlocked my room door, I already knew exactly what I was going to do next. Not for revenge. Not to make a point. But to live in alignment with the one feeling I had just experienced for the very first time, freedom. I opened my laptop and logged into every account I'd ever used to keep someone else's house running. First was the Netflix account. I went to user management. 5 profiles appeared: Mom, Emma, Dad, Lucas, and me. I deleted each profile one by one, except mine. Then I canceled the subscription. A message popped up. Service will end today. I sat for a moment, staring at the white text on the black screen, then moved on to the next step. I logged into the ISP portal, the account I'd signed for back in sophomore year, when my parents were denied due to low credit. I remembered that day clearly. The technician came to install the internet, and I had to miss a class just to sign the paperwork. They had said, "Thanks, sweetie, the house won't lag anymore." No one ever brought it up again. I canceled the service, no second thoughts. No hesitation. Next was the phone plan. A family package I had been managing. Dad, Mom, Emma, and even Lucas, the cousin who lived a block away, were all on it. I used to think it was efficient to group everyone together and save money. But in reality, the price I paid was invisibility. I opened the device management tab and clicked the button to disconnect all devices except mine. A message popped up. "Are you sure you want to proceed? Devices will lose access immediately." I clicked yes. Instantly, my phone buzzed. For the first time that day, I smiled, not out of politeness, but for myself. The first message was from my mother. "My phone has no signal. What's going on?" Right after that, Emma. "What did you do to the Wi-Fi?" I was recording, and I lost all my data. Then my father. "Internet's down. Do you know anything about this? Call your mom ASAP." I set the phone down on the desk and made myself a cup of tea. I didn't reply. I didn't rush. I didn't explain. About 30 minutes later, another message came in. From Lucas. "What are you doing? Everyone's losing their minds." It sounded accusatory, but all I read in it was a familiar confusion. The same look they used to give me whenever I said I was tired, that I needed a break, that I wasn't okay. They didn't understand. Never tried to. All they saw was that everything was still working fine. And now, for the first time, when everything stopped working, they finally noticed I had been there all along. I didn't reply. I opened a new tab, searched through my inbox for an email from 2 months ago. A job offer from the Great Lakes Environmental Research Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Back then, I told myself I'd accept after summer break, after spending some time with family. But now, I knew it was time. I typed a simple email. Subject: offer confirmation. Dear Dr. Levine, I hope the position is still available. If yes, I would love to accept the offer and start as soon as possible. Let me know the next steps. Best regards, Elena Foster. I hit send. And when the message sent notification appeared, I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and felt like I had just laid the first brick of a new life. A life that didn't begin by silently serving someone else. The phone kept buzzing. A call from Dad I declined. Then Mom I silenced it. Emma sent a voice message I didn't open it. I already knew what it would be: blame, pleading, noise. But now, that noise no longer had the power to pull me back. I checked my bank account. Every auto payment tied to the household had been canceled. The system now displayed: payment failed, insufficient permissions. I imagined Mom scrambling to reconnect the internet, Emma shouting because she couldn't upload her video during peak hour, Dad stressed because his credit card was declined at the gas station. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt fair. I reopened the document I'd started the night before. Added a new line. I am no longer the family's power bank. No longer the name behind every utility. No longer, can you handle this, sis? Honey, can you help Dad with that? Elena, I'm busy. Can you take care of this? I had done enough. Given enough. Carried enough. Now it was my turn. I stood up, opened the window, looked outside. The Rockford sky was still blue, still streaked with drifting clouds, still the same old town I'd once called home. But something inside me wasn't the same anymore. I was moving out of my old life and taking nothing with me but myself. The phone buzzed once more. This time, it was Grandpa. Elena, I'm really worried about you. Everyone's panicking. They don't know where you are. Call your mom, she's been crying all morning. I sighed. Not because I was weakening, but because I knew people like me are always expected to come back and clean up after change. But this time, I wasn't the one responsible anymore. I typed out a message to him. Grandpa, I haven't disappeared. I've just stopped pretending I'm okay. I'm heading to Wisconsin next week to start the new job. Don't worry. And for the first time, I hit send not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted to say it clearly. The messages from my mother started pouring in that evening, right after I accepted the Wisconsin job. They came nonstop, one by one, as if she couldn't sit still long enough to write a full sentence each message, a fragment of emotion spilled in chaos. First came the blame. Elena, what are you doing? Did you really think you could throw the whole family into chaos without consequences? Then came the denial. I don't understand how you could be so heartless. You've always been a good, obedient daughter. Now you're acting like a stranger. Next came the guilt tripping. Your father is exhausted, and Emma won't stop crying. Are you really going to let everything fall apart like this? As the messages kept coming, my mother's tone shifted to pity and complaint. You always overreact. Every family has its flaws. Can't you just forgive the little things? And finally, when there was no argument left to hold on to, she threw out the classic last line, the one people use when they don't know how to apologize, but still want to win an emotional battle. You'll regret it when your parents are gone. I stared at that message for a long time. As if each word was curling around my heart, testing to see if it still had the power to control me. Maybe once, I would have called back right away, my voice shaking as I said, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I would have apologized even if I wasn't wrong. Tried to put out fires I didn't start. But today, I wasn't that little girl anymore. Silence used to be my way of surviving. Silence to keep the peace. Silence so I wouldn't be seen as a burden. Silence so no one could say I was too sensitive. But that silence wasn't surrender, it was a painful kind of clarity. The understanding that if I spoke, I would be blamed for ruining everything. And if I stayed quiet, they could forget I was even there. 3 days later, I packed my things into the trunk of a rental car and left Rockford for Wisconsin. The drive took nearly 3 hours, but I couldn't recall a single part of the road. Everything passed by like a silent film, trees along the highway, weathered signs, rows of quiet wooden houses. I didn't cry, I didn't smile. I just took a deep breath when the sign for the research center appeared. The building wasn't large, only 2 stories, but it stood on a wide green lot, surrounded by fields and man-made lakes, like a peaceful outpost far from the noise of the world. I was greeted by a woman named Karen, part of the center's HR team. She smiled softly and handed me a badge with my name. Elena Foster, Research Associate. On the office door, a small plaque read, Elena Foster, Environmental Applications Division. I reached out and touched it. A name, a role, a space of my own. No one interrupting. No one dismissing. No one saying, "You're probably only good at book smarts." On my first day at work, I was introduced to the research team, 5 people, all young, intelligent, and respectful in their silences. There were no sarcastic jokes like the ones I endured as a university teaching assistant, no dismissive glances when I proposed an idea. During our first team meeting, when I spoke up, the department head simply nodded and said, "Good idea, Elena. Write it down and see if you can test it." I nearly choked, not from emotion, but from surprise. I had never imagined being heard could be this simple. The apartment I rented was about 10 minutes from the research center. Small, tidy, with a large window overlooking the trees and a balcony just big enough for a folding chair. I bought a desk lamp, a few books, a navy blue shag rug. Not for decoration, but to claim the space. This was the first place I had chosen entirely for myself. Built by me. Touched by no one else. I gradually developed new habits. Drinking tea before bed, journaling every night, and perhaps the strangest of all, playing music without hearing someone shout from the other room, "Turn it down. I have a headache." Small things, but to me, they felt like an entirely new world. One week after moving in, I stood on the balcony, a cup of tea in hand, watching the sunset spill across the rooftops across the street. I opened my phone. There were no new messages from my mother. The fragmented texts had stopped completely, as if they'd finally accepted I was no longer within their familiar range. I knew they were still talking about me, probably during family gatherings, between calls from my mom to my aunt, or from my dad to grandpa. But I also knew for the first time in my life those conversations no longer had any power over my life. I set the phone down, turned back inside, and told myself, maybe they'll never apologize, maybe they'll never understand. But I don't need that to keep moving forward. That night, the rain was light, not enough to soak a jacket, but just enough to make the air feel damp and heavy. I was wearing headphones, working on my first week progress report for the rural water filtration project in northern Wisconsin, when I heard a knock at the door. 3 knocks, firm. No one called my name. No urgency. I stood up, stepped into the hallway, and cracked the door open, not entirely surprised to see my mother standing there. Soaked from the rain, hair disheveled, with a look on her face that said she had no idea where to begin. She didn't bring an umbrella. No purse. No makeup. No longer the polished, composed woman I used to know, the one who always seemed to have control over everything. Her eyes were puffy, her nose red, her voice trembling as she spoke. "We just wanted to do things the way you wanted. I didn't know, I thought you didn't like big celebrations. I thought you'd prefer the quiet." A one. I looked at her without avoiding her gaze. I nodded, my voice calm. "And that's why you chose frozen pizza?" She went silent, taking a half step back as if the question had physically pushed her. In that moment, I saw her struggling to find an answer that wouldn't make her look worse, but she couldn't. Instead, she mumbled, "I know I was wrong, I just thought, at the very least, you knew no one in the family hates you." I didn't reply right away. Not because I was angry, but because I was choosing my words, not to hurt her, but to speak the truth without minimizing my pain. I opened the door a little wider, not inviting her in, but not shutting her out either. "Mom," I said slowly, "I've waited a long time to see you cry for me, not because of what I stopped giving, but because of who I am." She looked at me and, for the first time, didn't argue. She didn't rush to tell me I was too sensitive or that I remembered it wrong. She just stood there in silence. After a moment, she took a deep breath and changed the subject, as if that was the only way she knew how to escape the moment. "Emma, she's not doing well. She's barely left her room." She has no phone, she can't work, she thinks you hate her. I smiled. A small, tilted smile. Not bitter, just clear. You mean the phone I spent a year and a half paying off for her? This time, my mother had no excuse. Her lips pressed together, her eyes darted away. And I knew, in that moment, she was finally facing the reality that the comfort, the smooth operation of the household from the bills to the movie nights with working Wi-Fi had all been made possible by the daughter they used to think didn't need much attention. I didn't let her continue that line of emotion. I spoke gently, without a trace of anger in my voice. I haven't disappeared, Mom. I've just stopped accepting being invisible. It wasn't a grand declaration. It was the conclusion of a lifetime of watching, staying quiet, and enduring. A life lived in a house where my sister was always the spotlight, and I was the backstage crew, the one who handled the lighting, set the stage, arranged the chairs, then quietly vanished before the show began. My mother blinked. She made a small movement, as if she wanted to step inside, but I didn't budge. She stood there, soaked in the rain, like someone lost without a map. I'm not waiting for anyone to apologize, I added. I'm not expecting that anymore. I just want everyone to understand that I existed, fully, visibly. And I gave far more than any daughter ever should have to. My mother opened her mouth. I thought she might finally say something, maybe, I'm sorry, or, I understand. But instead, she defaulted to the familiar, defense. You always talk like this family never did anything good for you. I didn't let her finish. I shook my head slightly. Not never, Mom. Just not when it mattered, not enough, and not with sincerity. The person you always expected to stay quiet, to understand, to yield, that person isn't here anymore. I stepped back, one hand on the doorframe. And I don't hate this family. I've just stopped offering forgiveness like it's my duty. My mother nodded, as if she finally understood that this wasn't a conversation, it was a closing door. When I shut it, there was no weight, no hand reaching out. Just the scent of rain and silence slipping in. I stood behind the door, not crying. Not afraid. I took a deep breath, then turned back to my desk. For the first time in my life, I had said what needed to be said. And I hadn't said it to be understood. I'd said it so I could hear myself clearly, that I was no longer here to be forgiven. I was here to exist, fully. And I didn't need fireworks, parties, or belated apologies to validate that truth. Every morning in Wisconsin began with something I'd never had before. Peace. Not silence, peace. The peace of waking up without wondering what I'd be criticized for today. The peace of knowing I could get out of bed without checking who was mad, who needed something, who was pulling me into an emotional war I never signed up for. I began this new life not with naive excitement, but with rare calm, like someone who had swum through freezing water and now sat in the sun, finally realizing they didn't have to keep fighting the current anymore. Work at the research center settled into a steady rhythm. I was in charge of a pilot project focused on household water filtration for semi-rural communities, working with a small team, 3 young researchers and 1 senior advisor who had spent decades at the EPA. No one tried to speak over me. No one ignored me when I shared my thoughts. In the very first meeting I led, an intern named Jaden, shy, soft-spoken, always keeping his eyes down, lingered afterward and quietly said, "You're the first adult who remembered my name on the first try." I almost said, "That's normal," but then I realized for people like Jaden, and like I once was, being remembered by name feels like magic. It's proof you exist. That you're here. That you're seen. I began writing again, not to vent, but to record. To mark every moment I stood up for myself. Every step I took without looking back. I bought a leather journal, unlined, black cover, and kept it by my bedside. Every night before bed, I wrote a few lines. Sometimes about work. Sometimes just a vague feeling about a sunset I saw on my way home. No one mocked me for scribbling nonsense. No one asked, "What are you even doing that for?" And so, I didn't need any reason beyond my own being. I started going for afternoon walks around the small lake near the center. Some days, a colleague named Nari Korean, same age as me, joined me. She once told me her parents expected her to become a doctor, but she chose environmental science instead because only when I help clean water do I feel like I'm also cleansing the parts of me that were forgotten. We didn't talk much, but each time we walked together, I didn't feel alone. We were survivors not of an accident, but of a system that always asked us to shrink so others could feel comfortable. My phone now only buzzed for work notifications and a few health apps. No more missed calls from my mom. No more passive-aggressive texts from Emma. I didn't block them, I just silenced everything. Stopped replying. Not out of anger, but because I no longer allowed anyone to rent space in my mind without paying for it. I'd grown used to the quiet, not the suffocating silence of the past, but the kind I chose. The kind that let me hear myself think. I started learning how to cook. Tried one new recipe every weekend. Sometimes I messed up, burned the pan. I'd just laugh and order Thai food from the place down the street. No one glared at me for dirtying the stove. No one muttered about wasting gas. No one said, "At this rate, when will you ever get married?" I ate alone, but I wasn't lonely. Because that meal was mine. Made by me. For me. And that was enough. I bought a small plant for the window, a round cactus, low maintenance. I named it Dot because it looked like a period. A full stop. A quiet end to everything I once endured. Every morning, I opened the blinds so sunlight could hit it, a ritual reminder that life doesn't need to be loud, it just needs the right light and room to breathe. Every now and then, when I walked past the grocery freezer section, I'd see the same brand of frozen pizza from that day. I didn't turn away, I didn't freeze, I just walked past. Like someone who knew exactly where the pain once lived but no longer chose to live with it. I didn't need reminders to remember, I just needed to keep going, so I wouldn't be pulled back. One quiet weekend afternoon, I received a handwritten note from a colleague on the team. A small card in slanted script. "You make me feel like I can be myself without having to ask permission." I read it again and again, then placed it on my desk. It was one of those rare moments when I saw my role not as someone who carries the weight, but as someone who brings light. And that was more beautiful than any praise I had ever dreamed of hearing from my mother. I don't know if my family ever truly understood. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But what I do know is this. I don't need their understanding in order to live my truth. Forgiveness is not something I owe them. And silence is no longer something I offer unconditionally. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't write exposés. I never mentioned names in anything I wrote. I just lived as if, for the first time, I had chosen myself. Not because someone allowed it. Not because anyone needed me to. Simply because I deserved it. And sometimes, living peacefully is a kind of victory that needs no proof. My 24th birthday fell on a Saturday, in the middle of Wisconsin's fall. The air was just cold enough to make a light sweater feel warm, and the sun was soft, golden, like a quiet kindness from the universe for those who've walked through pain without losing the gentleness in their hearts. I didn't plan anything big. I just wanted to buy a small cake, invite 2 friends from the lab over for tea, play some music, and go to bed early. No one told me to put on some makeup to look cheerful. No one asked, "Still no boyfriend?" No one expected me to turn my birthday into a fake family reunion like before. I got to choose how I wanted that day to pass. And to me, that was already a gift. That morning, as I brewed coffee in my little kitchen, there was a knock at the door. I stepped out and opened it to find a young delivery guy holding a small package. "For Elena Foster," he said, with no sender listed. I signed, thanked him, and brought the box inside, feeling slightly hesitant. No logos, no brand labels, just a plain brown paper box tied with string. Inside was a small wooden picture frame, simple, unpolished, holding an old photograph of me and Emma as kids, sitting on the front steps of our old house, holding melting popsicles, our faces messy, laughing like we'd just discovered the best secret in the world. I remembered that afternoon. A summer day. Our parents were out, Grandpa was babysitting us, and he'd taken that photo with his old film camera, saying, "One day, You too will need a reminder that this happened. That. Beneath the frame was a small card, handwritten in a soft, familiar script I recognized instantly. No signature needed, I knew exactly who it was from. Just a few lines. I didn't know you were carrying that much. I do now. I'm sorry. E. I sat down on the floor, placed the frame in my lap, and studied every detail: my uneven pigtails, a scraped knee, and Emma's head resting on my shoulder like the outside world didn't exist. The photo didn't make me cry. But something shifted inside my chest, like a door that had once slammed shut, now quietly creaked open. Not to let anyone in, but to let the breeze pass through and soften what had hardened. I didn't reply. I didn't call. Not out of anger, but because I understood. Some apologies don't need a response. Some connections are meant to touch just once, not to resume, but to release. I placed the frame on my bookshelf, beside my science books and the poetry collection I read before bed. I didn't hide it away. But I didn't display it like a trophy either. It sat there as proof that the past happened, but it was no longer where I lived. That night, I hosted a small birthday gathering in my cozy apartment. Just me, Jaden, and Nari, the first two coworkers who became real friends. We ate a homemade chocolate cake I baked using a YouTube recipe, lit soft yellow string lights around the kitchen, played my old jazz playlist, and sat around the little wooden table. No candles. No loud party. Just three people talking about everything: water filtration, tech, favorite books, past failures no one else had heard about. Nari shared the story of how she lost a scholarship but got a hug from her chemistry teacher. Jaden admitted he used to be nervous talking to me because he thought I was too calm, but now felt comfortable because you don't expect me to be cheerful all the time. We laughed. Ate more cake. Talked late into the night. No one interrupted me. No one asked why I wasn't home for my birthday. No one made me feel guilty for choosing myself. Each of us carried our own quiet wounds, but that night we looked at each other with eyes free of judgment. And that, more than any house I had ever lived in, made me feel safe. When I walked my friends to the door, I stood for a while in the hallway, watching the pale yellow streetlights shimmer across the rain-damp pavement. I thought about all my past birthdays: my 16th, forgotten because Emma was sick; my 18th, folded into a generic family gathering; my 21st, spent alone with a tiny store-bought cake, and the phrase, "You're an adult now, there's no need to do anything." I had survived them all. But my 24th, quiet, unflashy, was the first time I truly felt present in my own day. I stepped back inside, dimmed the lights, leaving only the soft string of golden bulbs glowing above the kitchen. I sat down, wrapped my hands around a warm mug of tea, and looked around at the space I had made for myself. A round cactus named Dot on the corner of the desk, beige curtains, a small wooden frame holding a long overdue apology, all small things, but exactly what I needed. And then I thought to myself, this is home, not the place you're born, but the place you're respected. No fireworks. No drones filming the moment. No hollow compliments, just presence. Being seen, being chosen. No one forcing me to shrink so someone else could shine. I was simply myself. Enough as I was. Without needing to prove it to anyone. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing a birthday can offer. Not the wishes, but the return, not to an old house, but to a part of you that was once forgotten, now finally called back by your own voice. If you've ever felt like you had to stretch yourself thin just to be noticed. If you're the one who's always reasonable, always independent, always cast as the strong one simply because you complain the least, then Elena's story is for you. She's not someone who loves fireworks. She doesn't need big parties. But she, like you, deserves to be celebrated. To be acknowledged. To be called by name, not because someone else needs her, but because she's here. Sometimes, you will have to be the one to stand for yourself, not through shouting, but through silence that knows its limits. Not to retaliate, but to stop offering forgiveness as if it were your duty. You weren't born to be the one standing behind someone else's spotlight. You were born to live a life that is yours, small, quiet, and wholly your own. And remember this. Home is not where you were born, It's where you are respected. You don't need to be chosen to have worth. You are the one who chooses yourself. And that is enough.